Hello and welcome to this latest edition of the Virtual Bridge Sessions. And today I'm joined by Aiden Byrne from Glasgow Kelvin College, who is going to describe a really exciting approach to delivering virtual placements. Now placements have been basically a tough gig over the lockdown periods, and people have struggled to find those real meaningful experiences for their students. But frankly, Aiden, I think you're onto a winner with yours. So tell us more.
Thanks, Kenji. Well, today I'm going to chat about the online placement and the kind of management process of our online placement for a sports unit that we've delivered, but we're going to try and keep it, not sports specific, and keep it a little bit more generic, and we'll discuss a wee bit about how we've done sports development on a virtual placement. So I'll just share screens. Is that okay, Kenji?
Yep.
There's over there. So on here, we'll chat through a few different things. On the introduction, we've kind of said, we want to discuss the setup, the management, and the integration of a kind of online placement during lockdown. I'm going to try and demonstrate the methods I've used, the different apps that I've used, the technology that I've used, as well as discuss a wee bit around the SQA kind of next gen units that we've kind of got in sport now, and the different kind of freedoms that that's given us to develop this unit in a different way. So we'll look at the overview of the preparation and the management and some of the successes, and we'll hear from students, and we've got some feedback from the partners and the stakeholders that were involved. The overview, to give you a bit of context to start with, for the new sports development units, and it's a new 3-credit unit. It's the biggest unit I've delivered on, and was previously part of the SQA team to develop it through the QDT, but the unit itself has 4 learning outcomes. The first one's assessed holistically. It's a research-based outcome, and we basically try to integrate that into LO2, which is about sports development theory, and then LO3 is going to be more about them doing a comparative study on 2 projects within industry, and LO4 was more about the placement and the reflective process of the placement. So for those 4 outcomes, I thought it was probably a good idea to link with agencies, link with organisations across Scotland, and integrate the 4 and the 3, the placement with the actual comparative study. So I came up with a system across 2 classes. I was teaching a football studies class who were partnered up with Glasgow Life Football Development, who we have a long-standing partnership with, so that was easy. But the other class that I have is a sports coaching and development class, and for that I set up 4 different placements, one with Scottish Volleyball, one with Netball Scotland, one with Scottish Sports Futures, and one with Jog Scotland, part of Scottish Athletics. So for that to happen, I'll go through how I went about those processes and how students were involved and supported that kind of process. The crux of today will be about the LO3 and LO4 integration, but I'll show you a wee bit about how I managed the whole of the unit for the SQA kind of next gen purposes and for the use of apps, really. The preparation first for research for the LO1, this is the evidence for it, but you can see that you can really look to apply research aims and objectives across all the outcomes, but a lot of this was front-loaded in LO2 when we're discussing different theories of sports development. So for example, I would bring in the students on an online basis for lectures. We'd have various different tasks to do in classes, and we would look at various different sways and so on. So I'll show you some of those in a wee second. And we'd have formative approaches and some summative approaches within using the likes of forms and gauging the actual feedback from how the students are learning about the research. So if you like, first little slide here, this is just a sway that I use quite a lot for the learning theory. And when it comes to sways, you can have all sorts of stuff in there, from primary, secondary research. And this is some of the stuff from quantitative and qualitative that I would introduce early on when it comes to research. For the LO2, the theory of the LO2, there's various different topics that are obviously sports related, but we would look to doing all sorts of things, again, with sways, with PowerPoints. But the main point from this is how I kind of managed it through the OneNote process. And from OneNote was basically my hub, if you like. when it comes to my one note of how to organise this placement before we talk about the LO3 and 4 project work, really from a one note perspective, I look to have all my resources linked to the VLE. Or VLE was Moodle. It's also gone through a wee change. So I had various LO1 research stuff links in here for sways to how to do videos, how to map, how to look at research revision using forms, how to interpret results. LO2, various, again, sways on governance strategy, different links to videos, different task-related work in there. And again, MS Forms, using the Microsoft platform and integrating that either with our Moodle VLE or with the OneNote was the key to the way forward. LO3 and 4, you know, there's various different kind of stuff that I'll show you within LO3 and 4 and how we can look to grade and look to assess, and I'll show you some different bits and bobs from that. And there's templates again for LO4 and how they would do the reflection from the placement. So these are the kind of templates and the structure. The assessment overview was going to last all year. We set up various different meetings, and I'll show you a wee structure to that in a second. And an overview of the assessments for the students. And then from a perspective of how we assess, again, I've got all the students down here, both classes, sports coaching and football coaching classes here. And without ticking on them for GDPR purposes, these are like the blank templates taken from the ASP. So from a next gen perspective, you know, the LO1 was very kind of straightforward. We used Turn It In for LO2, and for LO3, group presentation with lots of individual contributions, and that was recorded. And most of the links here, they'll have a stream link to the video. So Microsoft Stream was used to record various different assessments and the links to their presentation, whether it was a PowerPoint or a SWAY they chose to use and develop. And then LO4, again, you know, this is the blank assessment template for how they would potentially be marked against their vlogs. They were doing video logs. So I'll show you some of those in a wee second. And that's basically how I would manage the class over the course of the unit. When it came to LO3, you know, we'd done various kind of theory. We'd probably worked for 12 weeks on research and a combination of research and sports development theory, governance, strategy, barriers to participation, and various things like that. Thereafter, we started to look towards the LO3 and comparing two projects. So first of all, the way I kind of went around that was I wanted to let the students explore various organisations first and foremost. They'd already done a wee bit of that in the LO2 of the actual kind of theory of sports development, and they'd started to sway towards looking at organisations like netball, because a few had netball interests, volleyball, jogging, and the other one was Scottish Sports Futures, who we had a partnership with in previous years. And they do a lot of third sector charity work within youth work in sport across the east end of Glasgow. So they were 4 organisations that we'd already had a little bit more of a knowledge about and a basis about. So I also let the students just go and explore those organisations more and ask the students, would these be organisations and potential projects that they do that you would like to research further? And it kind of came to a vote, and the students, you know, very luckily for me, you know, it worked out in teams of 4 that in the games and sports or sports coaching class, they all, there was roughly four in each group of the 4 organisations, and the students basically kind of got to know these organisations a wee bit more and looked to further research those organisations. From then, I really looked to then set up discussions and meetings with the relevant development officers, and I got the students to help kind of find who's the contacts. Again, part of a mapping of the personnel involved in each sport. But I did make contact with each of the development officers. So for netball, we got in touch with Rebecca Hope from Netball Scotland. She's the education manager there, and penciled in an email to them, basically detailing a lot of which the students had a say in, and detailing this potential project plan, where I would like them to come online for their LO3 and LO4 work placement, and our students would devote at least 20 hours in placement time towards reviewing 2 of their projects. So if you like, we kind of sold it to the different kind of partners that we're looking to get people with fresh eyes who are raw within sports development, brand new to sports development, and set their expectations as well. We've got students that are completely new at SEQF level 7, but they're keen to research 2 of your projects, and for those projects to then potentially be fed back to you so that we can get some sort of improvement plans for them. All of the groups were in agreement, and each of the development officers kind of went with this plan, and often had a 4th or 5th or 6th session to work with the students. But generally, it was going to work along the lines of this kind of setup, which was a class time on Wednesdays, and it meant that I could literally split myself between the 1 till 2 slot and then be in the full 2 till 3 and 3 till 4 slot. And then it would lead up to them presenting back with improvement plans following primary and secondary research. Primary with the actual development officer, but also with contacts that the development officer would facilitate, or at least point them in the right direction to get further research from relevant partners. The process bought in very well from the DOs, and it was done and managed through Teams. We were online calls, and how we set that up was simply through using different teams. We obviously used the setup here for OneNote to support that. And where is the Teams picture? It must be further down, but I'll show you that in a wee second. We set up teams for each of the groups. So there was 4 students and roughly 2 different partners and myself in each of the Microsoft Teams new teams. This became a great location for them to actually share and collaborate on all their work. So let me just see if I can just bring that up really quickly, because I've only got a picture of it in that sway. And you can see here in my teams, if that just moves across, you can see here that you've got a channel set up for Scottish Sports Futures, Jog Scotland, netball development and volleyball. And for example, there's various files saved in here, things that they've been working on, the research that maybe Netball Scotland gave them, action plans and various different things leading up to their presentation. They would present back at the end of the placement to their DOs or development officers. You can see they're all shared working documents and online kind of documents that they can all contribute to. So that was how the project basically was managed on Microsoft Teams. From a teaching perspective and from formative approaches, it was really good to be involved in all of those meetings. I could see who was contributing, who was engaging. I could ask questions on how they could contribute better, how they were taking notes, how they were looking maybe at things like shorthand. We would discuss things that would link into LO4, their skills, their listening skills in particular, their working as a team, their action planning, and how they would develop those on an ongoing basis, working with stakeholders, from industry. And also the difficulty of kind of dealing with industry level kind of work and trying to explain and make sure they were brought up to speed, because sports development often is an absolute different language to some students. So that was a really good kind of process to be involved with that. There was various additional meetings as well that we scheduled to support the students, and the students met with the development officers for those 4 or 5 hours, but they then had to go and develop the research in their team, and then they had to obviously manage their team, assign tasks, shared responsibilities and so on. So it also gave me an opportunity at the end of each meeting to have a little chat with the development officers as well, who's contributing well. On a personal level, they could feed back on the group, and that was very good from a formative setting. Also, I would organise ongoing one-to-ones with each group as a small team, or else one-to-ones personally with certain students that required, a little bit of additional support. And taking all these different feedbacks and the use of analytics when it came to the likes of Stream, we could check and see who was re-watching the videos. We could check and see the team members that were actually engaging and, turning up to do the tasks in their action plan, organised dates and times, because they were doing separate meetings on their own. So for me, there was various kind of other ways of feeding back. One of the other ones was also doing peer reviews, which I think I'll come to in a wee second. Action planning was something that the groups, this is a wee example here of the netball groups. I gave them various options on action planning. I gave them a kind of RAG stats, a red, amber, green option. But I also just gave them the responsibility to come up with their own action plan. How did they take minutes? How are they going to maybe take shorthand? How are they then going to action the tasks and take the task forward? And suggested things like tables, but this is netball, for example. They just fancied a bullet point list, and I let them just go with that. So that was from my point of view. I gave them ownership on that and let them just progress that as they went. Action planning could have been done better, but that gives them the feedback for their review when it comes to the review of the placement overall. So I felt that was quite okay for me. You know, if I don't want to always have everyone working, you know, to what I want them to do. I wanted them to find out, you know, if they had a better process, how could that have enhanced their overall experience going throughout. We also had this template, which was an ongoing document, which was a simple thing that I created I actually created it with the students again, to reflect back on their teammates and themselves. And they would submit this Excel sheet. I think it was on Excel initially and then on MS Forms, but they would give that back to me, and it would give me some sort of formative approach. And this one is actually one, I've just removed the students' names, but it gave me various information, you know, about two of the students and how I could then go and support and potentially help those students within this unit a little bit more, and maybe get them a little bit re-engaged or get them to do tasks that were maybe more suited to their needs. And if there was a confidence issue in speaking up to their team and making sure their team knew what their skill set was and potentially working within their skill set or pushing the boundaries to work out with their skill set, that was something that I could do. So that was another formative approach of really kind of supporting and flagging up, you know, any issues that we might have as we go. So the peer review document was really powerful for me anyway as a lecturer, and I can't be in every meeting all the time because I'm making all these additional meetings and we're doing things as they go. So from that point of view, we then moved into assessing. So they'd worked for 5 weeks roughly with their development officers. They had various other meetings. They potentially, the netball team, for example, were linking with local associations, LAs, and the LAs, they had various research from Netball Scotland, but they also contacted about 8 different local associations from all over Scotland to get further research. And the Jog Scotland team linked with various different agencies, like the Parent Development Network and various other kind of mums that were part of a Mums on the Run project. So they were reviewing a Mums on the Run project and the Jog Leader programme. That was the 2 projects that the Jog Scotland group were looking at. So, for example, you know, when it came to actually coming to the assessment and coming to present as a team, they had to do various additional research to make up to the criteria for the assessment, as well as making up their hours up to the 20 hours at least, and giving some sort of meaningful feedback. Because a local association in netball may, for example, not speak to Netball Scotland as truthfully, because they know what they're going to say probably to, we've got to tread carefully here, they know what they're going to say. If Netball Scotland asks them, what's your thoughts on this? But they're probably going to be a wee bit more honest to student feedback and not be critical of any kind of relationship that they might have with Netball Scotland. So it gives that fresh face and it gives that truer and kind of more honest reflection. And we've got some great kind of feedback from that Netball are going to take forward. So when it came to assessments, we looked to doing it on stream. We had various different kind of groups doing their assessment on stream and presenting. You can see here, you know, this is one of the stream assessments and it's linked to the OneNote. And you can, and they basically take take the DOs through the recommendations for the 2 projects they're reviewing. So, for example, on this stream assessment, you know, the assessment lasted about 18 minutes. The contributions are all recorded. There's great opportunity for assessment, for learning. There's great opportunity for feedback from both the development officers as well as from myself and their own self-reflection. And then they can take that forward in LO4. Thinking back to assessment and thinking back to the development of the unit, the next gen kind of capability, being a larger unit with a little bit more kind of freedom in assessment and taking these project-based learning, it really meant that there was a meaningful and a purposeful kind of experience for these students in an assessment situation. They were speaking to people from an organisation where they'd reviewed 2 projects with their stakeholders in mind, and they were giving them feedback that was honest and true, reflective feedback for that organisation to then go and improve those projects, like Mums on the Run, or like how Netball Scotland work with partner agencies such as local associations. You know, for me, it was absolutely really rewarding experience hearing the feedback from the partners, but it also brought the students up to a standard where they knew they were working and representing the college and potentially representing themselves for future employability reasons, and they really kind of looked towards putting their best effort in. So I think the way it's set up, it really motivated the students is one of the points I would like to make. When it came to then reflecting, so following assessment for LO3, they worked really well to do all of those assessments. When it came to the reflection on the whole process, the ASP had some really good resources in it, so I didn't really deviate from the ASP, but I put it into a SQA format for the reflections. And it basically meant that they were going to be doing a vlog style kind of reflection. I did, in line with the kind of SQA Next Gen stuff, I did give 1 or 2 students a little bit of flexibility. One student was very nervous in front of the camera, so she was given permission to use audio recordings as opposed to video logs. So there was a little bit of flexibility within it, but basically they all had to follow the same kind of criteria as normal, but in a video log presentation. So I set up a template and the students just adapted the template to suit themselves, and they recorded themselves throughout. So I've got a wee bit of feedback on that. I'd just like to show you Sophie and Liam very briefly, and some of the feedback from Sophie and her skills development.
Throughout this project, I have improved on many skills, but the 3 main ones that I've improved on are communication, listening skills, and effective research taking. My communication skills have improved due to working not only in a team, but with 2 DOs, Rebecca and Craig. Working in a team has improved my communication skills because I'm forced to talk to my team and make sure we're all on the same page and make sure we've all got the right information and stuff like that. And I'd also had to listen to Craig and Rebecca once a week, as well as my team, during meetings, and take notes down about everything that they're saying, everything that may be of significance to my presentation, which is also the reason why I have improved on my research taking. I had to take these notes in a very short amount of time and very fast because we only had 1 hour a week with them, so we had to just keep going and powering through everything. However, I could use some improvement on my time management skills because sometimes I would be late getting my research in time and submitting things that needed submitted.
So there's no doubt, you know, that there's always going to be issues getting research in, but she's been very honest, very reflective. One of the things that this girl said to me is she never realised how intense it was going to be and how much the meetings would be. You know, you should be having to listen so acutely and intensely, and also taking notes and developing our shorthand and developing our minute taking, and then leading into the action planning of future tasks to then go and see through the either the further research or to learn further about the project. She was a great success story within this unit, and very personally reflective, and saying that, that I've got additional skills that I actually really need to work on. And Liam here as well. This is following his skills review section, which both have given me permission to share with you, where they've had to reflect on their communication, listening, or various skills within their logbook. And then I'll just show you maybe a wee minute or so of Liam's as well, so you can get a flavour of what the students thought.
One of the key skills that I highlighted was listening. I felt that in every role that I undertook, it was important for me to listen to others, to value their opinions and take on board the way that they might want to do it. I do feel that I struggle to listen because of my nerves when I was in the meetings with Joe, because I was worried about what I was going to say. So I think with more experience, those kind of nerves will go away. The more meetings and the more interviews that I do. Another thing, a key one that I highlighted was teamwork. I feel that because we're working in a group, teamwork was vitally important. No matter what the role was, you were always collaborating with other people. I felt that I collaborated with one of the people in my group very well. I was able to talk to them, they were able to give me information back. But I feel like another member in my group, it was harder to talk to them. They were a lot quieter and didn't really have answers or questions. So I think that as a team member, I could have done more to try and help them come out of their shell and understand if they were having trouble understanding. So in order to develop that, I just think that I need to engage with everyone in my group more and help them get involved.
And again, very honest feedback from Liam, and Liam actually did flag up in his peer review, which further reinforced the backup of that when it came to one of his peers in his team. And therefore there was an opportunity for me to then go and do some sort of intervention with the other person in mind. But you can just show how thoughtful, it just shows how thoughtful, these two students in particular have been. And, I think one of the things for me is the being in front of such a meaningful placement kind of stimulated the students to showing such high levels of engagement and such high levels of motivation, because they were sitting with industry representatives in a formal capacity and within things that are potentially out with their comfort zone, like research and like some of the projects that they were placed to review. Guys like Liam have really engaged beyond anything that I'd ever imagined within working with partners. That's not to say that it was a success across the board. I did have 2 students that kind of dropped out and 2 students that were not engaging. I had to put on additional kind of support strategies for them to try and get them through. But on a whole, nearly everyone in the class passed this unit with really high achievement and attainment levels. So successes, how can you measure them? Obviously, from a partnership point of view, and I think we've tried to kind of measure them a wee bit here with students in mind. There's obviously, these 2 students have given us various kind of feedback there. Netball Scotland, Rebecca Hope sent a little bit of feedback here, just in text. They reviewed the local associations and they reviewed their coach education programme. Now, these are 2 high-level projects that Netball Scotland deal with. The local association piece of work is a massive piece of work. It's a level 8 or university level kind of research project, really. But we went with it on Netball Scotland, wanting us to look at this on their behalf. So students didn't actually select this one for this organisation, whereas students had an ownership in some of the projects they selected, more so with Jog Scotland and with the Scottish Sports Futures in particular. But you can see here, high quality and insightful piece of work. Really interesting to see that there's a clear link wanted between local associations and active schools. And that's information that's compounding or reinforcing some of the stuff that Netball Scotland have made it a recent ambition to improve those links. Other points that the students raised, that pathways and costs, are an issue, and they want to try and address their coaching pathways. and potentially make it more affordable and more accessible across Scotland, were some of the feedback our students gave. The overall presentation is clear, well thought out, done the research, and they're actually wanting to share our video and our presentation with staff internally, which is great. They're going to use it as a training, a kind of training platform for the staff to see the students that have actually reviewed those projects and what they've come up with from an external point of view. So yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff there from Rebecca Hope, and Joe Stevens from Jog Scotland sent a little bit here. And this is a bit about the structure from her perspective as well. Obviously, I've detailed the structure of how we've looked at reviewing the LO3 and the LO4 in an integrative kind of way. But reviewing those two projects as a work placement, basically working for Jog Scotland, really kind of said to her, you know, it's great having a fresh set of eyes on our programmes, extremely useful. One of the key takeaways here is the Jog Scotland team actually forged a relationship with the Parent Network Scotland, and the Parent Network Scotland are now going to support the Mums on the Run Jog Scotland project. And Mums on the Run was one of the projects they reviewed, and now there's going to be promotion, and there's a partnership that's been generated by our students linking with Parent Network Scotland and bringing them together with Jog Scotland. There's now going to be a meaningful future partnership between those two organisations, facilitated by one of our level 7s who made those links on our own. And it was just fantastic to see that level of thought and ingenuity to create those links, you know. So that was great. You can see on higher order thinking skills, a lot of the stuff that the students were doing was creative and you know, analysing, evaluating. So from a Maslow perspective, you know, great. When we talk about Skills 4.0 and next gen stuff, you know, the feedback from the LO4 really kind of leads towards the critical thinking within innovation and creativity really highly, their communication and their collaboration. And often there's people like Sophie, who we just seen on camera, was a really quiet and shy student and was not engaging so well at the start of the placement, but then took the leadership role and basically led her team thereafter. And you can see, you know, that there's various links to self-management within the action plan and within their teamwork and within their focus work on the next steps. So from my point of view, you know, there's various bits and bobs here I've popped down just to overview from a lecturing point of view, but we really did kind of learn organically. We scaffolded the research throughout it with the theory and the doing part. Everything was a kind of doing related activity. Very vocational. And social, I think, was key for students that hadn't really kind of met each other in person a lot of the time because we were in lockdown. So they were forging relationships, and globalization could even be a box tick there. But yeah, from assessment purposes, mixed method assessment, different kind of options to kind of bend the next gen approaches there. Lots of formative and ongoing, the stop and go checks, the peer reviews, I found particularly strong. And, you know, the outcome related project-based work, you know, they ended up having achieved development work within an industry that they might potentially move into, is where a lot of the jobs are coming. So from a point of view, getting that experience within sports development has actually swayed some of them to thinking this might be a career path for me. Throughout it all, there's obviously been a multiple use of MS apps, and our VLE is Moodle, which was the host for it. It's actually currently getting rebuilt, the Moodle page, so most of it was just on the OneNote there today, but the VLE is also another opportunity to host all of this information. My point of doing this today is, hopefully I've not chatted too long, but the point of this today is really to see if other people can learn anything or can take anything from it, maybe replicate it, and maybe see the successes that it's had for me and the students at Glasgow Kelvin College in particular.
Aiden, that's like, we've overrun slightly, but that it's such a good story. Like I want to say again, like, just as an example of giving students a meaningful experience, and especially under this kind of remote circumstance, you know, it's just so, it's so heartening to just see that work and some really good outputs coming out of that. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this recorded element of the virtual bridge sessions. I'll go back to the room and we'll carry on the discussion here with a few questions. But for those of you watching us on YouTube, sorry you couldn't be with us, really. Hope you'll be able to join us next time. But until then, stay
Thanks,
safe.
Andy. Thank you.